Hello, Rob. How good to see you, sir.
Likewise.
Very long time.
Yeah, it's been.
We met. When did we? Did I meet you in San Francisco for the game show?
Yeah, that was probably what, 2-3 years ago now.
Yeah, I think it was something like that. How are you? Kind of blurry there, but I don't know. Maybe it's just my picture. No, you're okay online. I'm seeing you online. It looks okay. Good. Okay. So how are you? Let's just start with that. Everybody, this is an old friend of mine. So let's start with the whole sort of how are you, Rob? Are you okay?
I'm great. No, really good, really good. We're just coming out the second lockdown here in London, so just
of course
through that.
Yes, you're in London now, aren't you? Yeah, of course.
Indeed. Yeah.
Indeed. So anyway, hello everyone for joining us online. I know that we have some viewers as well. Just a short to start. My name is Nonny. Every Wednesday, I go live 2:30 p.m. with an interesting guest, cool tech, or just a fantastic idea, and hopefully a Kinder egg of all three. And this is of course one of those events. And I have the great fortune of having met some really fun and cool people in my career, in my life, Rob being one of them. And I'm going to talk today we'll be talking to Mr. Robert Small, who, is it Rob or Robert?
Rob.
Okay. Rob. Okay, cool. We'll be talking about Miniclip, not only Miniclip of, yesteryear, but also Miniclip today. And also because I know that you've gone through like a kind of big metamorphosis. I mean, a big change over I was going to say the past decade, but you've been around for longer than a decade now, haven't you?
Yes, 2 decades, Danny. Can you tell by these lines?
But that's actually really cool to say that you have a digital company, online company that's been around for, it's 20 years now.
Yeah,
almost.
Yeah, 20 years next year.
20 years. That's a big anniversary coming up then.
Yeah, we're going to have some big parties, definitely.
Well, the fun thing is, of course, when I've been mentioning to people that I'm going to speak to Rob Small, they go, Rob Small, and I say, yeah, Miniclip, and they go, oh, Miniclip. I always used to be on Miniclip. So most people I speak to, especially in the gaming industry, of course, they have some kind of connection. Hi Debbie. Deborah's online as well. Debbie says hi. Yeah, cool. But let's go back to the beginning. It's like 2001, right?
Yeah.
And how did it all start? I mean, did you just say I'm going to build the biggest online gaming site online, or what was the start? What happened?
Well, I'm not being able to find a proper job, so really a requirement to try to start my own thing. But I think also I just felt that I was quite keen to try to start my own business, and I thought, I'm young, I could try and do this now. The probability of failure is pretty high, so I might as well get it done, learn from that experience, and then use all my learnings hopefully over the rest of my career. So I wasn't really banking on it being a success. We know that the odds are stacked against us, but so yeah, left university, met my co-founder. We were watching the dot-com bubble grow with excitement, like everybody, watching these startups that were becoming worth billions of dollars overnight. And to be brutally honest, thought we should have a crack at it and see what happens. And that's exactly what we did. And they say that timing is everything. And I think in the case of Miniclip in those early months, our timing was impeccable, because one of the first things that we created was an animation with George Bush, which we called Dancing Bush. And we shipped it and kind of distributed it to a small mailing list of a handful of people only a few weeks before George Bush decided he would get into the kind of presidential running. So this, initially he was a lowly politician, but then he suddenly became, a major kind of political figure. And so our first creation, Dancing George Bush, grew to become a worldwide phenomenon and put us on the map. And then from there, we built out our web business. As you say, a lot of people still know us for that. And we have very fond memories of more than a decade of operating our website, working with tons of talented developers around the globe, which is obviously how we met. And then, more recently moving into the mobile space and trying to kind of reinvent Miniclip as a mobile business.
And that's we'll go back to the pivoting part, because I mean, but you and we, I mean, this was for all of the youngins out there. I mean, this was like pre iPhone, pre App Store,
yeah,
pre sort of. I mean, there was programs for mobile telephones, Java programs, and you had to write like 60 for every. If you were doing a Nokia one, you had to do like 60 versions because there were 60 different handsets, and that was just Nokia. And it was early stages of Flash online Flash games?
Yeah, I mean, it was the dawn of kind of free to play games, Donny. I mean, that when people talked about games in 2001, they thought about teenage boys sitting in their bedrooms playing on a console or playing PC, and that was everybody's perception of a gamer. And we came along, and I think one of the things that we were fortunate enough to do, and this was driven out of an observation that lots of people were stealing music, stealing movies online, and we thought, look, let's just embrace that. Let's give away our games for free because people will want to take them, and let's package them up. Let's make sure that they're branded Miniclip, and let's use that eagerness to consume content on this new platform, the internet, and let those people spread the word of Miniclip. And that's why for the first 14 years of running the company, we didn't spend more than probably $20 on marketing, which sounds ridiculous, but we surfed that wave. And as you say, it was Flash that was the primary technology that we were using. And it was a fantastic ride for those first 10 years.
And I mean, I remember because we met during that period of time as well. And I remember that so well, because, and again, I'm saying, this is pre Facebook era. And it's also I mean, this is actually during the Yahoo still. Yeah, I mean, Yahoo is still, Yahoo is still the big player in the beginning, because I remember the first time I encountered Miniclip, it was benchmarked against, the Yahoo numbers, when it comes to views and visits and things like that. So, the only reason I'm going on and on and on about this is that I think it's both fascinating and an incredible feat to, like, these 19, 20 years later, having sort of, reinvented yourself and pivoted into a sort of a next generation thing. Because back then, the biggest online free-to-play casual gaming site. And for many, I think that you opened the door for casual gaming as well, when it comes to, free-to-play online as well, when it comes to the mass market.
Yeah, and I think, Donny, one of the things that Miniclip's purpose was from those very early days and continues to be today is unleashing the gamer in everyone. And with this image in 2001 of people only perceiving gamers as teenage boys, we knew from the people that were coming into Miniclip every day and playing our games that actually everyone had the potential to be a gamer. It was just about creating a game that would engage them. And so, yeah, and it was absolutely the dawn of what we know the games industry to be today. And that was incredibly exciting. And obviously the challenges that came with that were that we didn't really have any reference points for our business. Like, my business partner turned around to me after 6 months and said, look, Rob, we need to try and figure out a way to make money, because there was no obvious way. You're giving your games away for free. You've got a lot of users that are coming in. You're right. I mean, at our peak, we had over 65 million people playing games on our website a month. But, there was no well-established business model. And so we explored different models. We moved into advertising initially, and like a lot of companies in that era, the ad banners, the pop-unders, the pop-ups, the toolbars, right, just to make ends meet, pay the server bills. And then we started to see this trend towards subscription. And that was really when things changed. And we were very fortunate that we built up obviously quite a loyal audience. So as people started to innovate and create new products that were subscription driven, they tended to want to have them published on Miniclip. And so the first game that we published was RuneScape, which was a fairly kind of mid-core browser-based MMORPG, and that became very successful. And then after that, the experience of Club Penguin, which was just another worldwide phenomenon. And then, we've obviously met you guys and a whole host of other companies that were looking to kind of follow on behind the kind of Club Penguin businesses. And that, yeah, that allowed us to really expand and legitimize our business and turn it into, you know, a proper real company. Because, you know, prior to that point, we felt like we were kind of making it up as we went along.
Yeah, well, and doing quite well as well. Doing that as well. Right? It's
Well,
I mean, so many questions, and also fun to see that people are commenting here online as well. Used to play in school back in the day. I mean, I think a lot of people have. Yeah, Stefan says hi from Sweden there as well. But then coming to 2000, you know, let's say 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, sort of, you know, when with the big thing with iPhone, which I think that was, I think the big shift there was that they, you know, they democratized the apps, the App Store. Suddenly with App Store there and Google Play, you know, we had this other, you know, vessel of gaming and of actually distributing games.
yeah.
And what did you go through that in that sort of phase, and what happened there?
Well, to be honest, it was pretty scary, Donny, because we built a company for 10 years that had 200 employees. I think we had about 8 offices around the world. You know, we were a market leader in web games. And then suddenly Steve Jobs comes up with this new device, you know, the iPhone. Prior to that point, every game that was played on a mobile device was like Snake. I mean, it was a super basic experience. And there was no way that we could imagine the Miniclip brand on a feature phone. But when Steve Jobs announced, you know, the smartphone, suddenly we realized, okay, this is a way where we could recreate some kind of experience of Miniclip, you know, on those devices. The challenge for us was that if you just stripped it back and distilled it, Miniclip was basically a website that published loads of other people's games. We didn't really own a huge amount of IP, and you know, we certainly didn't understand the business of mobile gaming, and we didn't, you know, our whole company had been created to cater to the web. So although obviously this spiked our interest, it was 2007, 2008, we were not equipped really at that point to be able to properly embrace it. And it was only when we started to see, you know, our user numbers drop off fairly rapidly that we realized, okay, we need to do something about this. Because you know, Miniclip had, very fortunately, a lot of young people who were early adopters on new platforms, trendsetters. And so we could see in the data that we had that actually people were moving to these smartphones much faster than well, our competitors, I think, imagined, and that most people, you know, in the kind of general business world could see. But we saw it in that data. And so at that point, you know, we had to make some tough decisions. And I think, you know, the thing that got us through this kind of pivot point was a recognition that our company had been built to cater to the web, and it was a publisher, and we needed to become a developer on a mobile platform. And those skills were not transferable for most of our employees. So I had this horrible realization, probably 2010, that, you know, 200 people that worked for me were not going to help us to succeed on this new platform of smartphones. And so, and many of those people, by the way, were, you know, friends that I'd hired along the way, very talented employees that had helped us to achieve enormous success. But the writing was on the wall. And so I had to, like many people that have run a business for a long period of time, go through the pain of restructuring, you know, and that was the closest I came to having a nervous breakdown. And then just shift all the chips across the table from web to mobile, hire people that were dedicated and understood this new platform of mobile, and then try to create some compelling content. Because let's be honest, it's a hit-driven business, right? It's the same business, it's hits, it's the same as the web, but come up with a game that could really hit. And we were very fortunate in that we had this game, 8 Ball Pool, which was a flash game that was published on our website. You might remember it back in the day. It was just a single player game. And it was successful, but it wasn't, none of us could really properly anticipate that it would become the juggernaut that it is today. But, you know, we worked for a couple of years trying to figure out how we could create a product on mobile that would not only be fun to play, but also could generate serious amounts of revenue. And I think I don't credit myself for this. It was other guys in our team, but they basically took the concept of poker, kind of overlaid it on pool, and then you had people that were basically playing for, you know, for virtual coins. And that was, that was such an important part in our journey. It helped to fuel our mobile growth, and Able Pool's become one of the world's top grossing games now.
It's just, I'm going to release this one game, and then just suddenly, and then, then we had the Bush, and you make it sound so easy.
I can tell you it wasn't.
I know. I mean, I will say though that I know that I've been on the sidelines as well, and it hasn't been easy. But I know that you worked really, really, really hard, and even though you make it sound really, really easy, the old saying that you work your butt off for night and day for 10 years, and then suddenly one day you're an overnight success, and nobody really realizes how much work goes into it. So then, okay, so that was like the shift and the big pivot when it comes from web-based games to mobile games. But so what is Miniclip today? I mean, if you go to the site today, you get hit by kind of a nostalgic feel because look and feel is. But what is Miniclip today? What would you say it is today?
Well, we're one of the larger European mobile games companies. We have about 800 employees across 8 studios, mainly in Europe, so across kind of mainland Europe. And we've specialized with the success of Able Pool, we could see that the sports category was an interesting category for us to focus on. So we kind of focused tactically on trying to dominate that category off the back of Able Pool, believing that if you're a category leader, you kind of define what good looks like. And so just to follow up rapidly in trying to kind of corner off other sports. So so we focused on that. We continue to focus on casual games as we did on the web. So it's really trying to build for the biggest possible global audiences, trying to reuse actually a lot of the experiences we had back in the days of the web in terms of, looking out for game mechanics that we really think have global appeal, making them very accessible. I mean, one of the things that people always liked about Miniclip was, you could just click on a game and play. It wasn't very complex. It wasn't like a PC experience where you had to read the manual, go through a deep tutorial. It was just pick up and play. Yeah. And those are still the same principles that we use in our mobile business today. We want to make it highly accessible. And that's why we've generated almost 1 billion downloads of our games this year alone. We've been very fortunate in that the games industry has benefited during this horrible COVID period that we've all gone through. And so we've achieved record user numbers, over 50 million people playing our games on a daily basis. And it's almost become like, it says 40 on LinkedIn. So we have to up that number to 50. Yeah. It's moving rapidly, Johnny. But I mean, it almost feels like we're running a public service now, because, you think about all these people at home. Yes. And actually, one thing that was important and an important aspect of what made us successful on mobile was that we believed in multiplayer gaming very early on. And we felt that it was more fun to play games against, your friends in real life than it was to play against a bot. And so we leveraged Facebook's APIs early on and created games that really encourage you to play against your real friends. And that has helped massively. And when you look at a period like COVID, where people are locked indoors, desperate to see family members, it's fantastic that you can go and play your cousin or your, whoever it is, right, on a Miniclip game. And I think that's why we've benefited massively over this period.
But a billion games downloaded and then 50 million monthly users, those are amazing numbers.
They honestly, Donny, I mean, it's hard to become, after this many years of doing this, I think the one thing that I remind our employees about is just not to become complacent, because those numbers after a while just become, this kind of fog. And when you think about it, 50 million people a day who are prepared to pick up their phone and open up a Miniclip game and give us their time, we need to make sure that we really don't take that for granted, and we work incredibly hard to keep them engaged. Because let's be honest, mobile games market is one of the most competitive markets out there. And as soon as you start to become complacent, someone's going to come and eat your lunch. So we really do. One of the things that we've really focused on, it's so hard to create a successful game. When we do, we really work hard to innovate and keep the audience engaged in it. I mean, Able Pool's a great example. That game's been out for 10 years and it's still achieving record numbers of users, record revenue, because we've got teams that just think, their every waking hour about how we can continue to make it fun.
Yeah. And when it comes to that, I mean, I have a lot of questions on innovation and, new ideas and things, but I mean, there's two things. One is like, the basic game mechanics. And you mentioned that you can build on a lot of experience that you have from like 10 or even 15 years back when it comes to game mechanics. And so my one question is, how do you think that, game mechanics as such are, the same kind of mechanisms or or is it a new thing all the time?
I think it's a combination of the two, Johnny, really, because you've got things like AR now, which obviously are, newfangled ways that you can try to engage consumers in a different way. But actually, look at the growth of hyper-casual games in the last few years. I mean, hyper-casual games are basically like Flash games used to be on the web. They're very simple to play. The business model is kind of rinse and repeat, build the game quickly, get people into it, monetize it aggressively, primarily through advertising, and then cross-sell those users into the next title. And you build this virtuous circle. And they've been incredibly successful, companies like Voodoo and others. So I think there are still, people say there's no such thing as an original game idea. A lot of these things, a lot of the concepts that we look at today, they come from things like board games. Actually, a lot of the mechanics originally come from board games and things like that. So I don't think there's a load of new concepts that have come to the market. Now, I think a lot of it is iterating on stuff that's been done in the past, but perhaps in a slightly different way. And obviously you taking advantage of some of the modern technologies that we have, using data and using AI to make the products more engaging, rather than just like we used to do in the old days. We had no data. We just had to use our experience and our gut.
Yeah. And then when it comes to like new ideas, and you say, you're trying to be, trying to push the boundary, you're trying to sort of invent and reinvent and be in the forefront. How much are you prepared to fail how many new things do you put out for everything that you feel succeeds?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Innovation is a difficult thing actually in games, and there's quite a high failure rate on average. I mean, if you look at the data, the top grossing games, the top games in the charts, I mean, they don't change very often, and it's very, very hard for a new game to really, make an impact on the market. So as a business, people define innovation, Donny, often as new stuff, right? New, fun, creative stuff. I think that's a wrong definition of innovation. For me, in Miniclip, obviously that's part of what we do, but also we have to innovate like crazy to keep people playing games that have been out in the market for 5, 6, 7 years and that have been copied by so many developers. And actually, in many ways, that's a harder thing to do than trying to come up with a new concept. So I think in innovation in Miniclip is obviously there is an aspect of trying to create new products, and we do that. And I think we're quite good. Our hit rate is higher than most companies, because of, I think, the decade of experience we've got in operating the web, the thousands of games that we've published on that platform, our ability to be able to interrogate the data there and say, remember that game that used to be a hit game on miniclip.com? Let's try and reimagine it on mobile platforms, right? And make it compelling for touchscreen devices. Other games companies don't have that. Yeah. And we also have a brand, right? And the problem with the App Store is, how do you get your stuff discovered by consumers? If you're lucky, you might get the App Store editors wave their magic wand over you and give you a featuring for a day or two. But otherwise, you've got to buy users. And that's a very difficult thing to do. Unfortunately, Miniclip, because our games are social, because we have a well-established brand, we still generate a huge number of organic installs. And that means that we're probably more sustainable than others in the market.
Yeah. Just very short. Anybody, I know we have a number of people watching now online as well. Feel free to post so far people are posting greetings to Rob and to Miniclip saying, my kids do endless hours on Miniclip. So this, I've spent countless hours on Miniclip as a kid, and, everybody's, waving and really happy to see you. And I think that many people don't know that, what goes on behind Miniclip and where it all came from. So this for me has been is a great opportunity. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat here as well. I of course have tons of questions. We only have another 5 minutes or so because we don't want to go over half an hour here. But what would you say? What do you see now? Now with COVID, do you see? Even pre-COVID, I think, if you agree with me, and please disagree if you don't, I
Right.
saw, like the rise of social gaming. I mean, a social element of gaming I felt was sort of on the rise again. And one would think then that has been sort of accelerated with COVID. I don't know. What would you say? I mean, you've probably seen it happen sort of,
Yeah, I mean, 100%, Donny. Look, people have been stuck at home. They've been bored. They've watched all the Netflix box sets. Gaming has benefited massively from that, unquestionably. The market is very hot right now. I mean, in terms of trends that we're seeing in the market, all the public games companies are trading at record valuations. There's been, a lot of M&A activity in the market. I think, you've seen companies like Unity IPO recently, 30 billion valuation, and there's a whole host of other games companies now that are desperate to get listed quickly to take advantage of these tailwinds. So it's been, I mean, as it always has been, the mobile games market is incredibly dynamic. It's incredibly exciting place to be, which is why I can't say I've ever had a day that's been boring for me in the office, because it is so exciting and there's always new stuff to learn. But we're seeing, I mean, other trends that we're seeing a lot more kind of AAA console IP coming to mobile. So you'll be well aware of the success of Fortnite, Call of Duty, PUBG. And I think we're going to see more of those big console IPs making their way to mobile in the future. There's a lot of pressure at the moment on the app stores. The 30% tax that you may have seen has taken headlines, right, with Epic taking on Apple. And there's been an announcement in the last week where Apple are going to cut their commission rate to 15% for developers that generate less than $1 million a year. So there's actually, for the first time in a decade, really, we're starting to see some movement there. And I think that's important because it's very hard to create a sustainable, viable business in mobile. The margins are getting smaller and it's becoming harder for the app stores to justify, taking 30% of the pie. So I think we'll see more movement in that as well. And then, yeah, as I say, M&A has been super hot. We had an acquisition earlier this year, which was a huge one by Zynga. We bought Peak Games for $1.8 billion. So the market is just, as hot as it's ever been. And a lot of that driven by COVID.
Yeah. Okay, well, okay. So now that was good, because now you also had you actually answered my next question, which was, trends and what we see going on in the games market. But then we have, okay, so then it sounds like, it's the big names are moving into mobile. We have the bigger that are becoming bigger because they're emerging and being acquired. So what if I'm an aspiring young or old game dev and I want to create a game? I mean, it feels kind of intimidating that it's only these big brands, that are, that take all of the space. How do I, even though, okay, anybody can publish an app store, but how should I think if I'm like an aspiring game developer? What's, any tips?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Donny. It used to be, look, I mean, I'm a classic example of this. I was messing about on my computer 20 years ago and created a success that put my business on the map. That is very hard to do today. As you say, consolidation's been happening, the market's been maturing, and scale is incredibly important. And, user acquisition and paid marketing is really one of the only ways that you can scale a game to, incredibly high levels. So I think it is difficult to just, have a crack at it yourself and work out of your bedroom with a few mates. I mean, there are still companies that do that, guys that do that, and teams that are successful. There's one right now among us that's done very well. But on the whole, if you want to get into the industry, I think the first thing I would say is it's important to recognize that the business of games is different to the kind of consumer side of gaming. A lot of people think that it's like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory in the Miniclip office and we sit around and play games all day long. It's a business, right? It's a business like any other, and we have to manage the fundamentals, and we have, HR and finance and legal. And of course, there is the fun aspect of running a games company, which is the product. But, you still need to learn about the fundamentals of business. So I think taking a formal route into it is worthwhile. There's lots of university degrees out there now that can teach you about, game programming, game design, and things like that. I think the other thing, Donny, which is something that's very important, is right, you've got to choose. There's so many different roles within the games industry. You need to choose something you love, because if you're going to pursue it as a career, you need to be passionate about it, and you'll be far more successful if it is something you love rather than something you're doing just for the money. So I would encourage people to choose something that they genuinely have an interest in. Get experience, volunteer, work within a games company to see what it's like and how it operates, and learn as much as you can. Right, you've got to self-educate yourself as well if you want to get into a new field.
Yeah, I think both of those points are very well spoken and well taken as well. And I see that at the university where I work, helping students and researchers, that the ideas and the tech can be amazing, but adding the other components to it to make it an actual business is a big part as well. And I think that, I mean, with that last comment on picking your finding your passion and actually going for it, and don't be afraid to spend those couple of years learning it, learning the trade. I mean, and sharpening your teeth and getting into it and building your network. I think that's a great message and really happy, good go forward message as well for everyone out there that's aspiring to join the business, because I mean the business is growing as well. It's a huge business.
$170 billion market now, Donny, the games market, 2.5 billion gamers. So there's a big market to cater to.
I mean, who would have thought that when we were making the snake stuff for Nokia's back in 99 and 2000 and whatever it was, and what we were doing. Anyway, I won't keep you longer than this. This has been the Wednesday afternoon Innovation Fika, and Fika, of course, is the coffee break in Swedish. With me, Donny, I do this live every Wednesday at 2:30. This week, we've had the great honor to be had our guest Rob Small, who founded Miniclip back in 2001 at the kitchen table with Tian, right?
That's it.
That's it. And has now, and for the first 10 years, was the biggest online casual game site in the world, more or less. Yes, you were. And then now today, one of the biggest, European at least, and still one of the biggest game companies with 800 employees, 1 billion downloads this year, 2020, and 50 million monthly users. I mean, it's really fantastic. Daily. Sorry. 50 million daily users. The thing was, I couldn't compute that number of zeros. No, but really, thank you so very, very much for being on the show, and have a fantastic rest of the day, great week, and please stay safe. Follow the rules, wash your hands, keep a distance, play some social games online. What do I know? Maybe by a company close by. So really good seeing you again, Rob. Really, thank you.
Likewise,
and thank you all for watching, and thanks for all the comments here. Everybody's waving to Rob, and good delivery, good story, cool. Thank you very much. Fascinating conversation. Thanks everyone for commenting. Rob, thanks again. Take care.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.